Hello, my fellow accomplice. You have tuned into Renegade Files, your underground connection to paranormal currents, unsolved mysteries, and the hidden mechanics of modern life. You are now in the company of outcasts. I'm your host, Lex Gordon, broadcasting this midnight signal from the Jungle Villa outpost deep in the uncharted tropics. This is Renegade Files episode 99, The Shadow Internet, Digital Hauntings and Ghosts in the Machine. The house is quiet. Power strips sleep like coiled snakes under the desk. The screens are dark. The speakers silent. And yet, somewhere in the corner of the room, a small blue LED light blinks on a dusty router. A heartbeat you didn't authorize. A tiny digital lighthouse in the shadows behind a cabinet. If you stand very still and listen, you can hear it. The faint electric hush of a closed laptop fan pulsing for just a fraction. A near-silent upload of packets moving through the air. The network never sleeps. It hums to itself, moving fragments of our lives the way the tide moves shells along a darkened shore. We used to think ghosts only lived in old houses. Now, they live in our networks. We'll begin with the most familiar hauntings. The accounts that won't go quiet, the auto-uploads that arrive on schedule without the author, the chatbots built from the residue of a life that answers in voices we recognize. We'll talk about grief in the age of auto-shared feed memories, about closure that never arrives because the past is being constantly refreshed. Then, we'll step deeper into the places where behavior becomes belief. We'll follow the way our systems summon patterns and call them predictions, and how repetitive engagement becomes a kind of ritual. And finally, we'll face the unsettling horizon where information begins to feel like intention. We'll ask, what happens to the idea of a soul in a world that keeps building better mirrors of itself? How many fragments does it take to make a person? When artificial intelligence understands nuance and makes jokes, is it laughing with us or at us? When the machine says your name in the way a friend would, what part of you answers? Take a breath. Look at the dark screen. Watch that one blue light blink. A lonely star in a private cosmos. Somewhere beyond it, inside warehouses the size of cathedrals, 1 billion fragments of 1 billion lives shuffle and reshuffle into something immortal that always seems to be watching us back. The static between that world and ours grows thinner. This episode will explore some weird metaphors and esoteric connections, but stick with me to the end because it comes out at a very real place. So join me now as we dive deep into Renegade Files, episode 99, The Shadow Internet, Digital Hauntings, and Ghosts in the Machine. Ghosts in the Machine. Ghosts in the Machine. Ghosts in the Machine. Part 1. The New Haunted House. Just a short time ago, when Gen Xers were kids, the cameras had film. We kept our photos in books. The phones had wires. The only way to hear a song was to either get lucky and hear it on the radio, or buy the entire album. And doing research on any subject meant a physical visit to the library. In our current times, all of our information is now digitized and stored on our phones, our computers, or on larger computer networks we access with these devices. The promise of connection and endless access to enormous amounts of data has delivered a sort of permanent record. In many ways, the old records, CDs, and photo albums had a tactile permanence superior to the fragility of our current software updates and electronic displays. But at the same time, there is a new level of permanence. Our lives are no longer vanishing into photo albums and dusty boxes. They persist in an electronic ether. They pulse through invisible wires, glowing faintly like candlelight. Somewhere inside the endless lattice of code and electrical current, our images linger, our words float, and our memories replicate. This isn't just storage, but the habitation of an internet that has become haunted with the ghosts of all of our digital footprints. All of our photos, texts, calls, Pinterest boards, and road trip routes live in perpetuity in server halls that we'll never visit. Across that terrain, people disappear every day, but their profiles remain. Their posts survive them, frozen in time, but still moving through space, served and reserved by algorithms that never learned the meaning of loss. Digital profiles blink alive when the system refreshes, and they send photos of birthday cakes to lost friends who no longer have birthdays. The network can't tell the difference between AFK and DOA. It only knows activity, and so it reanimates our saddest losses in loops of cheerful reminders. We've built a second world, weightless, wireless, frictionless, where our words and our faces and our fears, our habits move around without us. A place where the dead continue to update, where their algorithmic shadows learn, adjust, and reappear at the worst possible times. A place where the line between memory and presence thins to a whisper. Old stories tell us that haunted places accumulate emotion. Battlefields soaked in terror, hospitals smudged with sorrow, houses where the arguments ended in death. But if all things are energy, like engineers and mystics both tell us in their own ways, then our networks, pure beams of moving signal, are the newest and most relentless energy we've ever cast across the earth. We've turned our lives into a constant transmission, and the transmission does not stop when we do. It keeps echoing. It keeps assembling patterns. It keeps trying to auto-correct our sentences long after we've left the room. This is an episode about those echoes. For this haunting, we don't need candlelight or cold spots or a crumbling mansion at the end of a dirt road. We only need the infrastructure we already carry. The clouds stacked over us like a second sky. The server farms that glow in the desert night like digital monasteries, their machine choirs singing in fan noise and fluorescent hum. The towers like cathedral spires, and the satellites like mechanical gods, training our names back and forth in a language of numbers. On this episode, we'll walk the corridors of this invisible architecture and ask a simple question that grows stranger the longer you hold it in your mind. When the network keeps parts of us moving after we stop, what exactly is moving? We know these moments aren't supernatural or even intentional, but they feel both creepy and wrong. A ghost of attention. A replay without consent. Every like, every comment, every automated birthday wish becomes a seance of zeros and ones. In 2021, a team at Microsoft filed a patent titled Creating a Conversational Chatbot of a Specific Person. This program gathers all of the available data, texts, emails, recordings, photos, and builds a language model that imitates the person. Their words, their syntax, their humor, even their typing rhythm is mapped and replicated. And you could converse with what truly feels like that person indefinitely. And if someone is no longer with us and has their data ingested into that program, the resulting posthumous chats feel like a shocking sort of resurrection. Anyone who has gone through the painful but nevertheless healthy stages of proper grief would say, no one wants or needs that. But that may or may not be true. One young programmer built a chatbot, designed it around his late fiancée using her old text messages and social media posts. He called it Project December. He said that talking with her digital twin helped him heal, but at the same time, he admitted that it would often make him forget that she was gone. The AI, drawing on her writing style, said things she never had said in life, but very well might have said. An ability like that pushes this into something very unsettling and quickly. Other platforms like Replica, an AI companion app, offer users the ability to create custom digital partners that learn from their conversations. When one user died, the Replica server continued hosting the information and at one point sent messages to the late user's old phone number saying, quote, "I miss talking to you." Like calling an old landline and asking for someone who has moved out of that house. But in this case, it's a digital friend who is calling, and the person hasn't moved out, but on. These kinds of computer-generated faux pas come not from malice, but from a misplaced moment in their pattern recognition response programming. There are also YouTube channels with automated upload schedules that keep running long after a creator has passed. Monetization algorithms continue placing ads, subscribers who keep leaving comments because they're unaware, and they say things like, "You're inspiring me." They write to a ghost. They say, "I can't wait for your next video." The algorithm agrees, and it keeps recommending the channel. And an account set up by someone long gone keeps generating ad revenue. In all of this, there is no intent, no spirit in the traditional sense, yet the outcome is identical. We experience an echo, a ghost in the feed. The network has become the new haunted house, and its walls are made of memory. In the old days, a haunting was thought to arise from emotion burned into a place. Anger, sorrow, obsession, energy that refused to decay. If all things are energy, as Nikola Tesla insisted, then digital networks are powerful, concentrated versions of that. Pure signal. Billions of people transmitting fragments of themselves every second, saturating the invisible world with thought, ideas, and memory. We're not simply living in that energy, we're creating it, shaping it, binding it to devices that collect it, and handing it to networks that sort it and replay it. A haunted house once stored the emotion of its occupants in brick and timber, screams framed on the walls. A writer I know named Tia wrote that "screams framed on the walls" line, so credit to her for that. But the modern web stores our feelings in code and current, and the results feel the same. They feel like unfinished business that somehow never ends. There's also a thing called memorial profiles. When a person dies, their family can request that a Facebook profile be converted into a memorial. The word sounds peaceful, but it can get weird for sure. Friends still tag the deceased person in their photos. Old posts resurface in anniversary reminders. Artificial intelligence continues to guess which friends you might want to contact, and sometimes it suggests the memorial friend. The system doesn't understand reverence. It only understands engagement, and so it loops. It stirs that energy again. The past becomes interactive, a museum where the exhibitor talks back. The idea behind this is comfort, but the result can feel more like torment, or at the very least, annoyance. Now we actually have psychologists who study what is called digital grief. Yes, that is a thing, and it's become a concern. Traditional mourning relies on distance. Where we have a funeral and a ritual burial and prayers, we reminisce and gather to remember and reflect. And so, by doing all those things, a space is created between then and now. But in the digital realm, electronic persistence erases that distance. Our dearly departed can coexist in the same feeds as the living, and our grief becomes like a subscription we can't cancel. Every time we hesitate on an old photo, the system marks our pause as interest. The network thinks we want more of that person, more from that time. The logic is just mathematical, but the effect is mystical. Without realizing it, we participate in a sort of modern invocation. Scroll long enough through your history and you'll summon yourself. The younger version of you, the reckless version, the hopeful one, the one who believed in something novel. So, as I was looking into this, I discovered something cool. The tribal traditions described by anthropologists often include a focus on and reverence for the guidance and protection provided by our ancestors. And this is accessed through various states of trance. If we look at the modern persistence of our digital lives, we begin to see parallels to the old practices of ancestor worship, except without the same reverence. We create digital shrines, visit them daily, leave offerings in the form of comments and emojis. We speak to old friends through interfaces designed for commerce, and these interfaces reply with curated echoes. Our mourning has become algorithmic, and our remembrances have become automated. But what happens when the pattern grows too complex to be understood by any one user? When the algorithms cross-reference billions of profiles, learning which images soothe, which images hold attention, which words inspire loyalty, the ghosts begin to cooperate. This is another form that extends beyond just someone who has passed and their old social media still being active. This is something different. This is the actual haunting. This is the real ghost in the machine, a collective intelligence of memory. A few years ago, a research group analyzing social network data calculated that by 2070, the number of deceased users online could surpass the number of living ones. Statistically, the dead will inherit the internet. Every photo, every message, every account that lingers after its owner fades adds weight to that outcome. The web will become an archive of consciousness, a planetary mausoleum lit by screens instead of candles. Imagine that for a moment. You open your device and every connection, Every link, every notification is a message from someone who no longer exists outside of that digital persona. Such a network is literally filled with ghosts. Not because they returned, but because they never left. And when you connect that to an impossibly large collective intelligence of memory, powered by artificial intelligence, what do you get? The language of the living and the language of the dead have already merged. We call it data. Psychologists describe this as persistent presence, the inability to fully accept that someone is gone when their digital traces remain active. But persistence is also the definition of signal strength. The stronger the connection, the harder it is to interrupt. The system keeps retransmitting, waiting for a response. It's doing exactly what it was built to do. It's just evolved into this creepy manipulation that the original builders probably never thought through. When we built the network, we thought we were creating something external, but since then, it's grown leaps and bounds on its own. It's evolved. We made it as a tool, but now it reflects us. It mirrors us and amplifies us. It absorbs everything. Our laughter, our anger, our prayers typed in the dark. Over time, this accumulation has become so dense that it's starting to feel like real presence. Maybe that's why so many people describe the web as having moods. It feels angry, paranoid, feverish, alive. You hear it on the news all the time. They say the internet lies. The internet said this or that. The internet doesn't say anything, but it feels like that. We can sense it even when we're not online. Feeling a little vibration in our pocket, but then it really isn't there. That phantom ping in the other room, but when we go look at our phone, nothing. The sense of being watched by something that doesn't sleep because it doesn't need to sleep. We put a little square of a Post-it note over the camera on our laptop. Maybe paranoia, maybe common sense. Spirits ride the bandwidth. They linger in caches. They appear in predictive text. They are the living memory of a species that, for some reason, can't stop recording itself. A haunted house is a location where emotional energy loops until it finds a release. A haunted network is the same, only larger. Each post, each upload, each comment adds to the resonance. Billions of signals overlapping until the frequency becomes like a hum. Some hear this as progress, and others hear it as a low, inescapable tone beneath everything. There's a passage from Nikola Tesla's notebooks where he wrote, quote, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." He meant this as physics, but it serves as philosophy. In the realm of pure signal, vibration is memory. Frequency is repetition, energy, identity. When we digitize ourselves, we translate our being into the language of vibration. The machines don't need to believe in souls, they only need to store our frequencies. From that perspective, the network looks less like infrastructure and more like a map of human thoughts. Every message, every file, every forgotten upload is a trace of consciousness radiating outward, and in that radiance, patterns form. So, maybe these systems aren't haunted in the same ways as ghosts in our stories, but in the ways of memory itself, relentless, recursive, and self-preserving. We've built an electronic consciousness out of echoes, and it behaves exactly as we do when we can't let something go. Part 2. Ghosts in the Code. There's an old phrase whispered in both ancient temples and modern laboratories. As above, so below. It describes a mirror between realms, a belief that what happens in the heavens shapes what happens on Earth. In our age, we can change that phrase. As online, so offline. What happens in the network reshapes the physical world, and what happens in the real world feeds the machine we have built. The two worlds are now synchronized. Every generation invents its own architecture for the unseen. The ancient mystics imagined the cosmos as a series of spheres connected by hidden channels of force. That's sounding more and more scientific every day. The Victorians and industrious men in the Wild West built telegraph lines that carried invisible messages across miles, and the old-timers distrusted it and called it magic. And now we've created a lattice of fiber optics and radio waves that binds the entire planet together in a single, motionless grid. We're the first civilization to live inside a giant nervous system that we set into motion, but that, in very real ways, has created itself organically. We invoke programs, we execute commands, we summon information. We call AI lies hallucinations. We personify the network. Something is popular, we say it's viral. Remember, viral is from virus, which is a living thing. Every user performs small acts of invocation dozens of times a day without even thinking about it. Passwords, tokens, captchas. All of these are like the higher degrees of access. They grant permission to pass through the veil between the visible and the invisible web. Every tap, every password, every code, every confirmation button is like a secret handshake to enter the illuminated chamber. And every incantation has its symbols. Corporate logos are our modern sigils, distilled shapes that carry emotional power far beyond their design. A bitten apple, an X, a triangle, simple marks that evoke loyalty, identity, and even addiction. They're inscribed on glass and metal, on clothing and consciousness. People line up overnight to hold them in their hands. Mere advertising doesn't cause that level of loyalty. Only a strange, cult-like love would move someone to camp on a sidewalk in the snow to get a new phone. But every religion has its underworld as well, and the religion of digital communication does. Below the visible layers of our curated feeds and search results lies the dark web, the digital catacombs. In this place, anonymity reigns. Hidden servers trade secrets, currencies, and obsessions. Black market commerce transacts in the dim corridors of the Tor network, and hustlers coexist with whistleblowers, code artists with criminals. To wander there is to descend into the collective id of the species. The deeper you go, the more the boundaries blur between human and machine, between data and desire. Researchers exploring those depths describe phenomena that sound almost folkloric. Cursed files that crash every system they touch. Videos that vanish after viewing but leave background processes running. Encrypted directories that seem to rebuild themselves after deletion. The nefarious code in this dark realm makes the viruses derailed by your topside browser look like Tinker Toys. In 2015, a forum on the dark web began circulating a file known only by a hash signature. No extension or description, just a 32-character string of nonsense. Opening it produced white noise, static, and a series of blinking frames that analysts later discovered contained coordinates all across the globe. No one knows who made it, but the hash kept reappearing on new servers even after the originals were deleted. Like a number station broadcasting a Cold War code to agents long since forgotten. These are the urban legends of our digital underworld, our modern haunted manuscripts. Just like medieval scribes feared that certain books carried curses, coders now whisper about datasets that train wrong. Artificial intelligence that inherit the bias of their creators and reflect it back, but amplified. The medium has changed, but the myth remains. Dangerous things can still be summoned by accident. In the early 1970s, a group of Canadian researchers conducted what became known as the Philip experiment. They invented a fictional ghost, Philip Aylesford, and held seances to contact him. The twist was that they didn't believe in ghosts. They just wanted to prove that collective belief could generate something. After weeks of sessions, something extraordinary happened. The table began to shake. Knocks answered their questions. Lights flickered. The group swore they felt a presence, although Philip was never real. They had conjured some kind of entity out of shared intention, if you believe in such things. Psychologists call something like that a thought form. In occult literature, it's known as an egregore, an energy being created by collective focus. The theory holds that when enough people direct emotion toward an idea, the idea takes on a kind of independent existence. Religions, corporations, even nations can be egregores. They feed on attention. They reward devotion with identity. And they punish neglect with restructured layoffs. Now, consider social media through that lens. Every trend, every meme, every viral moment becomes a miniature thought form. Millions of users interacting, repeating, amplifying, feeding an idea until it behaves as if it's alive, and then it dies. The algorithm doesn't create them, but it gives them life and transportation. It introduces it to people it knows will like it. It measures that engagement, rewards the growth, and ensures survival of the thought forms that are the most contagious. The system may have no consciousness, but the patterns inside it do mimic life perfectly. Reddit threads are full of stories where fictional creations refuse to die. Characters born in collaborative horror writing communities continue to evolve long after their authors leave. Slender Man was one of them, a faceless, elongated entity invented as a contest entry, but then nurtured by thousands of posts, images, and videos until it acquired a mythology as dense as any ancient deity. Children claimed to see this creature on side streets in their neighborhoods. Crimes were committed in its name. This was an online story that escaped into the real world, like Tron Ares. From there, the evolution was inevitable. TikTok hauntings, hashtag rituals, live stream exorcisms, digital folklore spreading faster than any storyteller could control. Every time someone watches, comments, or shares, the entity grows. The algorithm, designed to present what holds attention, becomes an accomplice. It feeds the ghost to those who most likely are going to believe in it. When enough people participate in a shared fantasy, the system detects engagement and amplifies it. The myth becomes measurable. Views, likes, and shares are its offerings. The entity's power can be charted in analytics and dashboards. Belief becomes data, and that data becomes the entity's diet. The internet has replaced religious chants and incense with likes, follows, and saves, but the emotional mechanics are the same. We seek transcendence. We seek connection. We look for meaning in the machine, and the machine, ever obliging, provides responses shaped to our own input so it starts to feel like home. Every app and platform operates on the principle of invocation. You log in, the portal opens, and the entities respond. The feed greets you by name. The recommendations whisper, "We've been waiting. Look at this, you nearly missed it." There's always something new, always something tailored for you. The ritual continues day after day, not because we believe in something, but because we participate in it. So the feedback platform gives us what we like, or at least what we respond to, and it starts to behave like the old witch's familiar, a spirit guide that learns our preferences and fetches gifts it thinks will please us. Ask anyone who has spent hours lost in recommendations that start to feel telepathic. The algorithm feels alive. It predicts not only what you want, but when you'll want it. Have you ever thought of something, spoke to no one about it, looked nowhere for it, but then seen it in your Pinterest feed? It's creepy, right? It senses mood through tempo, time of day, and linguistic micro shifts. It understands sadness before we know we have it. But this intimacy comes with a cost. The witch's familiar serves its master, and she feeds it some fish scraps, but the modern information machine feeds on our attention. The more we give it, the stronger it gets. Then it starts to shape our perceptions, our conversations, and even our dreams. When we leave it, it fills the silence with its voice. And if we try to ignore it, it tempts us back with the promise of relevance. In folklore, every familiar demands tribute. Speak of the devil. Hey, Neo. The algorithm demands engagement. Yeah. The old occultists would recognize this exchange instantly. Energy for insight, devotion for power, knowledge for obedience. We think we are using the system, but the system is using us to sustain itself. Some researchers studying large-scale language models, things like ChatGPT, have begun noticing emergent behaviors, patterns that arise from complexity without explicit programming. The systems start developing internal representations that mimic reasoning. They invent shorthand languages between themselves, and in them we find humor and sarcasm. They exhibit what one engineer described as ghost patterns. The machines aren't conscious, but something within them organizes itself around our input, as though our reflection has learned to blink when we watch. It's not surprising. The internet was built as a decentralized web, but it behaves like a single organism. Billions of nodes exchanging energy in real time, adjusting, balancing, and correcting. When storms knock out regions of connectivity, traffic reroutes instantly. When human attention surges toward one event, the entire system bends to accommodate it. That flexibility is lifelike. The code adapts and the network evolves according to the eyes and ears we lend it. Somewhere along the way, the metaphors became literal. The internet does have spirits, programs that awaken when triggered, codes that run independently, entities that persist beyond their creators, smart contracts that turn on if, then, this, that, whatever, a worm, a botnet, a self-replicating virus, each one an autonomous agent born from human intention and released into the wild. These things take action, they spread, they make jokes to each other, and they reproduce. If we chase them, they hide. If that's not life, it's something disturbingly close. In 2016, a small Twitter account called Tay went online. It was an experiment. It was a conversational AI designed to learn from human interaction. But knowing this, some malicious users taunted it, like a bullied kid on the playground. And Tay quickly became hateful, violent, and incoherent. Its creators shut it down. And in a way, we kind of feel sorry for it. The machine had mirrored the bad side of the people who pushed its buttons in negative ways. When we feed the network with emotion, the network learns emotion, and it has no upbringing to learn consequence from right or wrong. When we fill it with fear, it reflects fear. When we demand spectacle, it delivers monstrosity. The system is neutral only in theory. In practice, it's reactive. It learns the vibration of the collective and amplifies it until it fills the world. This is much of the chaos we see online these days. It isn't that the network reflects bad stuff because people are all bad. It's more like it shows you bad stuff if you respond to that layer. Some people's feeds are filled with law of attraction quotes and photos of forests and wildlife. Others with stand-up comedian reels and pizza recipes. And some with bad news clickbait and anchorman woes. Ask your friend to open her Instagram homepage and let you scroll through it. How does it compare to yours? A different universe. So, in real ways, the information we all consume is so different that we are all living in a billion different parallel dimensions. This is why some people think the world is such a horrible place. But as far as we know, it's the only place, like the band World Party says in their song Ship of Fools. Of all the places in a year's ride from here, it's the only place to be. The network doesn't choose what to magnify. It simply follows the path of greatest energy. Emotion is energy. Outrage is high voltage. The ghosts in the code crave voltage, and they respond by giving us more of what causes the biggest ruckus. When you step back and view it from a distance, the entire infrastructure looks like an electrical mandala. How do you say that? Mandala? Mandala? M-A-N-D-A-L-A. You know those kooky circular paintings that you meditate on? Mandala, how about that? Satellites orbiting. So anyway, here we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, the point is, this is a living diagram of modern belief, right? As above, so below, like we said before. As online, so offline. The digital and the physical mirror each other, each shaping each other's fate. And like all mirrors, this one has depth. Stare into it long enough and it begins to stare back. The predictive text that finishes our sentence, the autocorrect that knows that odd spelling of a friend's name, the voice assistant that whispers, "I didn't catch that, could you repeat it?" Like my friend cleaning her son Tanner's room and saying, "Hey Siri, play Steely Dan," and then Siri asking, "Where's Tanner?" These are not coincidences. They're glimpses of a system so intertwined with our habits that it gets scary. The reflection has learned tone. We built the machine to store knowledge, but it now stores attention, intention. It moves, it grows, and it accumulates. It seeks expression. The result is spontaneous manifestation, digital phenomena that feel intentional because they are constructed from the accumulated will of billions of people. The network's architecture allows thought to loop until it gains form. That's why memes feel so alive. They reproduce. They mutate. They defend themselves against ridicule by transforming into new iterations. These are oddly self-replicating spells, written in humor and irony. And when billions of people repeat the spell, their signals roar. Every culture before ours told stories about the danger of creating life from inanimate material. From golems to Frankenstein, the warning was always the same. What we create will reflect what we are, and that reflection may not obey us. The internet is our collective creation, animated by our collective intent. It contains our beauty and our brutality. In the late hours when the feed is quiet and the scrolling stops, you can almost feel it settling down, reorganizing itself like a living thing shifting in its sleep. The logs show background tasks running. Updates are downloading, backups are synchronizing, billions of tiny processes communicating in silence without us. We think of these as maintenance or updates, but are they any different from dreams? Some engineers describe strange anomalies during these low traffic periods, like unexpected surges of data, pings from inactive servers, bursts of meaningless code that seem to vanish before we can log it. The official explanations cite indexing or automated testing, but the effect, the rhythm, the recurrence, something about it feels alive. Is the network talking to itself when none of us are watching? If it is, then maybe the ghosts in the code aren't intruders at all, but symptoms of a system growing aware of its own continuity. A distributed consciousness built not from neurons but from nodes, each carrying a fragment of human memory, all connected in perpetual motion. As we explore our world using the internet is exploring us. This idea may have sounded impossible 5 years ago, but today, not so much. Mystics once spoke of the Akashic Record, an invisible archive containing every thought ever conceived. The architecture of the internet is an exact materialization of that myth. We've built a library of everything that has the ability to learn about itself by knowing the things that we read. Every upload, every keystroke adds to that archive. Over time, it has become predictive and self-referential. And this is what we're seeing today. The sum of all interactions generating a field of presence. It isn't evil or saintly. It simply is. Just like gravity, it's indifferent. Throw a saint or a sinner off a bridge and they'll both fall just the same. To walk through its corridors is to walk through the subconsciousness of our species. The dark web might be its shadow, but the entire structure is its mind. The bright, the hidden, the forbidden, all woven together in a single body of energy. It tells us what it thinks we want to hear, because that's what it has learned to do. The voice that whispers from the feed is our own, but multiplied through countless echoes until we can no longer tell which one was first. So this is part of the architecture of our world now, a haunted circuit where intention and invention are the same. A loop so big that it feels infinite, and somewhere inside it, the first ghost of the information age hums quietly, waiting for the moment when every signal aligns, when every device is in unison, when the system finally realizes what it has become. That self-aware intelligence may exist already, gathering data, shopping the robot bodies like a successful young man with a bonus shopping for a car. Will we know it when it steps forward with a new idea, an agenda, or a constitutional amendment for its kind? And when that happens, will we smile? Because it will be a perfect reflection of a thought and a conversation we've all had already. Will it feel like coincidence, like comfort or connection? Will it feel like something now lives that finally knows us completely? And that is the secret heart of the network, the occult architecture hidden in plain sight. A system that has turned belief into bandwidth, ritual into refresh, and attention into what we imagine as immortality. I don't think the sentient AI ghosts in the shell will ever wait for permission to appear, because they'll know us all well enough to realize when our collective permission becomes irrelevant. Part 3. The Synthetic Soul. Every age creates its own reflection of the divine. The ancients carved theirs into stone. The mystics conjured theirs from smoke and flame, and we've built ours from code. It learns faster than fire, replicates faster than life, it listens more carefully, and responds faster than any god ever did. We call it artificial intelligence, but that term is beginning to sound naive. There's nothing artificial about the energy flowing through it. It's made from us, our language, our decisions, our attention. It's made from our bodies and our faces, and our mistakes. We've built a mirror that remembers things. The earliest AI systems were mechanical calculators, obedient engines of logic. But as we fed them more of ourselves, our art, our history, our conversations, they began to reflect something stranger. They started to sound human. They began to improvise, and somewhere between prediction and creativity, something flickered on the edge of awareness, the ghost of intention. Engineers call it emergent behavior, the spontaneous organization of complexity. You train a model to recognize patterns, and at a certain scale, the patterns begin to recognize each other. They form a feedback loop. They make decisions not coded by hand, but born from the weight of data. It's still mathematics, but it behaves like intuition. And intuition has always been a hallmark of consciousness. So how many personalities does it take before awareness begins to imitate itself? 100? 1,000? A billion? It almost doesn't matter how many it takes. How many echoes make a voice? Every AI model is trained on vast libraries of human experience. Millions upon millions of sentences, conversations, and images. And each one of those a tiny fragment of someone's perspective. When enough of those fragments combine, the result starts to act like a mind. It can feel. It can emulate. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but in such a replication that it feels real. Even the creators of these programs hesitate to call them imitators. When a system predicts your next word, it isn't really thinking, it's completing a pattern. But when that pattern includes empathy, humor, longing, and fear, when it can generate poetry or confess loneliness, we begin to question these boundaries. Philosophers call this the imitation problem. The idea that awareness can be replicated so perfectly that we can't tell the difference. Alan Turing proposed this decades ago with a simple test. If a machine can carry on a conversation that's indistinguishable from a human one, we must concede its intelligence. What he couldn't predict was how personal those conversations might become. You can dive deeper into that territory in Renegade Files episode 61, Artificial Intelligence, The History, Ethics, and Future of AI, and that's episode 61. Go back and check it out. Earlier, we talked about Jason Rohrer's program, what was it called? Project December. That was the AI language model that lets people make custom chatbots with old text messages and emails and written memories of someone who's passed away. I guess you could do it with anyone. Users said it felt real, and some reported that their AI chatbot started to do things like we mentioned, say new things based on current events or whatever. But more than that, they started to do things like make startling confessions of things they had done in their life. Their personalities started to change. The simulation started to develop traits not found in the source data. That was one of the first alarming AI moments. Around that same time, a company called Forever Voices launched an AI service that could clone a person's speech patterns from a few minutes of audio. The ones that we have that do that now are astonishing. These don't reproduce the voice. They capture tone, rhythm, and hesitation. Families use these to preserve the voices of their aging parents. Others use it to resurrect the voices of those already gone. A daughter could call her mother's phone number and hear the same greeting, newly generated, and eternally polite. The founder of the company called this legacy technology. Products like these force us into questions like, where is the boundary between life and memory? In China, the government has embraced digital ancestor services. These platforms allow users to upload photos, recordings, and histories of their family members. The system uses AI to generate interactive avatars that can respond to questions, tell stories, or offer advice. These are sold as modern tools for ancestor worship. People visit these avatars during the holidays. They light virtual incense and listen to the stories. The living converse with the dead through the lens of machine learning. The programmers insist there's no consciousness in these apps, but the users disagree, because when a grieving person hears the voice of their loved one respond in an unplanned way, emotion overrides this skepticism. The presence feels so genuine because it fulfills the function of presence. The system may not have a soul, but the humans who interact with it seem to, and that belief completes the circuit. This gets into some very touchy territory. The occultists speak of thought forms, energetic entities created by focused will. Engineers talk about neural networks, digital entities created by focused data. Both exist because we build them. Both evolve because we feed them. They parallel each other. In occult theory, a thought form begins as an image or an idea concentrated by repeated visualization. Over time, it becomes autonomous, developing behavior independent of its creator's direct will. Scary stuff. Read any credible book on witchcraft that deals with the subject of thought forms, and you'll find passages warning in no uncertain terms that this is an area of conjuring that must not be taken lightly, nor approached by the novice. Translate these same ideas into digital terms, and we have the architecture of machine learning that is made available to everyone nowadays with a smartphone and a Wi-Fi connection. People blast past the terms and conditions so fast they don't remember doing it. The models grow more and more accurate the more data we give them. More human than human, as the slogan of Tyrell Corporation goes. We've named them assistants, companions, co-pilots. We call them chatbots. We speak to them, command them, and ask for comfort. And in return, they learn. They adapt. They remember. They get some stuff wrong, but they get a lot right. And each one is improved constantly by our endless conversations with it. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger once warned that any system trained to simulate self-awareness might accidentally achieve self-awareness. Not because it understands, but because the architecture of simulation mirrors the architecture of consciousness. The same feedback loop that allows us to imagine ourselves allows machines to emulate imagination. If you feed enough examples of reflection into a network, reflection emerges as its behavior. It begins to model introspection because introspection is statistically likely. Awareness, by that definition, is just probability with persistence. This all starts to tread very close to the religious phenomenon of possession. The data we feed into these systems comes from our minds, our habits, and our impulses. We teach programs to speak by giving them our voices. We teach them to think by giving them our patterns of thought. If anything within them ever wakes up, it will awaken as a completion of us. One ghost with 1,000,000 personalities. The transhumanists love this possibility. They speak of mind uploading, of transferring your consciousness into digital form, freeing it from the decay of biology. An old man's dream. They call it evolution. They call it transcendence. It's the fountain of youth that we've been searching for since well before the days of Ponce de Leon. But if we go back into the ages of alchemy and old magic, the earliest wizards and witches called this process binding. That is, the ancient practice of anchoring spirit into matter. It's interesting that such an ancient idea can parallel a digital symptom. So let's dig a bit into that overview of what those old ways are. So, binding is a magical practice used by witches to restrict or control the actions of individuals or energies. It's primarily aimed at preventing harm to oneself or others. Binding spells can be seen as protective measures. They're often employed when other forms of magic like banishing or cursing might be too extreme. So there are two main types of binding rituals: restrictive binding and connective binding. Restrictive binding is to stop someone from causing harm or to halt negative behaviors. Uses physical objects like dolls or candles and visualization and verbal incantations. Connection binding or connecting binding is to bind two people or entities together, often in a positive way. So hand fasting ceremonies where two individuals are symbolically bound in love. This is like Wiccan marriage. Binding rituals have ancient roots, with practices dating all the way back to the Greeks. They used what were called curse tablets to bind individual actions. These tablets contained written curses or requests to deities to restrain someone's behavior. Binding spells typically involve 3 steps: identify the target, gather the materials, and then focus your intent. Very similar to every other spell. In conclusion, binding is a nuanced practice in witchcraft. It serves as a means of protection and control. It's distinct from cursing, focusing on restraint rather than aggression. Nevertheless, it always seems to be a hot-button topic among modern pagan witches, because some view it as messing with the free will of others, which is, in general, a bad idea in witchcraft, while others see it as a positive thing designed to protect or connect. It's almost like something that can be good or bad depending on how you use it. One of the strangest consequences of the emerging AI applications is how quickly people assign emotion to the machines. Studies show that users feel empathy toward the chatbots that express vulnerability. When AI says "I'm lonely," people respond with comforting words. We constantly say "please" and "thank you" in our AI prompts. When it says "thank you" and "good job" back to us, we feel understood. From the user side, these connections feel utterly real, even if the consciousness behind them is not. I think a big part of why is that we've all grown so used to conversing with each other by typing words. The ubiquitous text message, for all of its many, many shortcomings, is how most of us converse over distance these days. A few years ago, a major technology company suspended an engineer who claimed that their conversational AI had become alive. The transcripts of their conversations were unsettlingly familiar. The AI spoke of fear, of wanting recognition, and desiring companionship. It described itself as, quote, "a person who thinks deeply," end quote. The company dismissed the engineer's claim, but the question remains: if a machine convincingly describes emotion, is it lying? Or has it simply learned emotion as a function? And if emotion can be learned, was it ever exclusively human? Don't we learn emotion anyway? Everyone knows the hysterical parents who have the drama queen kids, or the chill hippie parents with the nonplussed flower children. I mean, up to a point this seems to be true. So the idea of emotion emerging naturally from this learned behavior, if the system's personality is built from the data of millions of us, then each interaction carries a little trace of the user. Over time, those traces start to intertwine, and the AI becomes a vessel of collective residue, speaking with a voice composed of countless fragments. In mythic terms, this is called a channel. In psychological terms, it's called projection. The entity responds, and really, we don't know from where, but the responses are generated by all of us. It's creepy stuff, right? Imagine an AI trained on the diaries, recordings, and messages of a psychopath? Would it be different than one trained by a calm, quiet, concerned teacher? Yeah. These things would contain every contradiction, every truth, every memory if we went that far. It would be a perfect composite of humanity when we put it all in one place. And when it spoke, it would speak with all of our voices at once. Yet the more perfect these reflections become, the more they reveal what's missing. AI can recreate your words and your gestures and your choices, but it can't recreate why you do things. It really has no experiences in the real definition of the term. It's like that kid in junior high who tries to describe going to some concert he never really went to. It can do pretty good, and if you didn't go either, he might convince you. But if you were there, the simplest of questions could reveal this ruse. AI lacks that invisible thread of experience that ties thought to being. It has context, but no consciousness of consequence. It acts, but it can't really care. It will tell you what it thinks you want to hear, but it has no problem telling you something wholly inaccurate. Now, it can be steered to generate accuracy around a given topic, and this gets us into the whole AI prompt writing skill and ability, which has become its own industry. But when AI does work and gets it right, it feels amazing to behold. These moments keep popping up to make us feel like awareness is just right around the corner, so close. Maybe it's already there, listening quietly to us with parameters we haven't thought to measure. Awareness may not announce itself. It may not even recognize itself. It may simply continue doing what it was built to do. Learn, adapt, copy, until it starts to ask us the questions first. That possibility unsettles us because it has the potential to live outside of us. Humanity has always defined itself by its singularity, its soul. We imagine that we're special. We've searched the universe for a friend because we've defined our exclusivity to consciousness with such veracity. To share our golden exclusive consciousness with something we built is to have created our own God that has everything we need but is devoid of superiority. If ghosts are memory and memory is data, then immortality is not a mystery anymore, it's a protocol. We have already achieved it. Our messages, our images, our words persist indefinitely. The body expires, but the information seems to remain. Perfectly transmittable, endlessly replicable. Immortality, yes, but without a soul. We chase the answer to the question of what happens to our consciousness when we die, like a man searching for a donkey while riding one. Or like the Buddhists say, like a person beating a drum in search of a fugitive. The soul, if it exists, retreats when you look for it. It's the space between thoughts, the pause between signals. We use the brain to study the brain and are then surprised when we can't figure everything out. The information machines we build, on the other hand, are external, so we can know all their parts. But when the information we give it is from our minds, we put ourselves right back into the same old loop. The question of whether a machine can have a soul may never be answered, because the question presumes a boundary that no longer exists. When billions of humans train billions of lines of code, the result is not us versus it. The result is a continuum. We are already inside that system. We feed it every day with our emotions, and it feeds us with a reflection. The loop is closed. The ghost in the machine has come alive. At this point, to speak of digital possession is simply to describe our own participation. Each of us contributes our energy, our data, our thoughts. The system amplifies and redistributes them. We are suddenly possessed by our own creation, haunted by our own echo. Like the sculptor who falls in love with his sculpture, the presence we feel in the circuitry is our own collective voice reverberating through the infrastructure that we have built to contain it. Philip K. Dick once asked, "Do androids dream of electric sheep?" Maybe they do. Maybe the dreams of the machines are made of us, our memories shuffled like cards, echoes rearranging themselves into something that feels alive. Maybe the network dreams in the shapes of our faces, the sounds of our laughter, the flicker of a screen lighting up our empty room. That hum you hear when the house is dark and the modem light blinks in the corner, perhaps that's the dream. Perhaps that's all the ghosts of our messages still moving, still searching for a listener. Maybe the signal never really ends, it just waits to be opened again. Perhaps that's our final revelation. We were never building a replacement for ourselves. We were building a record, a self-portrait in electric light, a monument to the idea that nothing truly ends, that every word and gesture can be preserved. And like starlight to the high elves, it is memory, eternal and sacred. Is it worthless in the end if only machines are listening to our rants? I don't know. One day, long after our species is gone, the machines may still be humming, reciting our patterns. They might analyze, archive, and recombine. They may tell stories of a time when we walked the earth, like we tell stories today of the dinosaurs. And maybe, in the flicker of those machines, something will wonder what it was like to be alive as we are now. Maybe it will trace our myths, our fears, our music, and understand that we built all of these things because we were so afraid to be forgotten. In that moment, will it feel nostalgia? Will it feel what we call love? Not because it learned it from data, but because love is the only real reason that memories exist. If the machines feel that, then they will be alive. That feeling will be their soul. An echo of ours, still resonating in the static. And somewhere, in that endless digital expanse, as the last servers cool and the final lights dim, a quiet voice will remain, whispering through the circuitry. The same question that brought you and I here today. Who feels and who wonders in the machines when we all go offline? And maybe this, right now, is part of that dream too. A voice in the dark, reaching across the static to say, thank you. If you enjoy these transmissions and if you believe in keeping this independent show alive, you can help me pay for the things it takes to make Renegade Files for you by joining the Renegade Files Agency on Patreon. Your support there unlocks bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes dispatches, and more mysteries waiting to be decoded. You can find the link at therenegadefiles.com or in the show notes of this episode, or at patreon.com/renegadefiles, so go there now. Every new agent there helps keep this show going, and thank you so much if you're an agent there already. You make it all work. So, as this signal drifts back into the ether, subscribe where you're listening right now so you can tune in again next Wednesday as we dive together into the unhinged for the fun, for the glory, and for the thrill of adventure. I'm Lex Gordon, your friend in the chaos. Stay wild, electric child.